Hello, my name is Marjorie and I'm a lecturer in French at the University of Reading. I'm also the admissions tutor, so I read quite a lot of personal statements, and my aim today is to give you some tips as to what can be included in a personal statement, what we quite like to find in a personal statement.
And I'm Kia Shackleton. I'm a Year 2 student here at the University of Reading. I studied German, English Language and Linguistics as a joint degree, and I'm giving you a student's perspective of what's good to include.
So the first tip that I would like to give you is the fact that we really like to see, for people who are applying for either a pure language degree or a degree that combines a language with another subject, we really like to see motivation and an enthusiasm for the subject, for the language.
It's really important to show your enthusiasm and immersion in your target language. So what's been your cultural engagements? Have you read any books? Have you watched any films? Have you been to a theatre production? Have you taken part in a project that relates back to it? Let us know, because that shows that you're interested.
Yeah, and even if they are the books on the curriculum, if you're studying languages at A-level, or the films that are set that you have had to study, if you've enjoyed them, it's definitely worth mentioning them, but give evidence. Try to be quite specific and tell us what you have enjoyed about them. Don't just say, oh, it was really interesting reading this particular book or watching this particular film. Give specific, try to identify specific aspects that you enjoyed and maybe that you would like to pursue and study further in your university studies. And even if you haven't studied the language before, there are still ways of showing motivation.
Whilst I already had studied German, I also included my experience with learning Mandarin, because it shows that you have the capacity to learn. Anything that you can show that gives that you have that drive and that determination to kind of pick up something new, which is an incredibly hard task, it will get you miles.
Yeah. The second thing that we really like to see in a personal statement is evidence and examples that show that you are an independent learner, because even though when you learn a language, a lot of the learning happens in the classroom, we also need to have confidence in the fact that you are willing to put some of the hours in and study outside of the classroom. So what advice would you give?
Well, it's all down to kind of knowing that language is down to muscle memory. You need to kind of hone it in, you need to practice, you need to put in the time, and that obviously can be quite difficult when you're studying for A-levels. So anything that can show you've got time management skills, for instance, have you been working a part-time job and you've been able to serve customers of your target language and help that out? Or for instance, personally, I worked in a radio station, so I constantly focused on communication. I incorporated a cultural hour into it, which kind of helped me kind of immerse my viewers and listeners into the German culture.
Yeah. So it's fine to include examples and experiences that are outside of the academic studies, that are extracurricular, but what you really need to do is highlight what they say about you, about the immersion in the subject, about your time management abilities, about your communication abilities. So try to articulate these examples in terms of what they tell us about you as a person, about your personal qualities. And this is true as well if you're applying for a joint honours, so for a combination between several languages or between a language and another subject. So I think this was your case as well, wasn't it?
Definitely. As someone who studies a joint degree of German and English Language and Linguistics, it's very important for me to show that they connect and that my knowledge will feed back into each other. So for instance, I was like, so there's this specific element of syntax because Germans send their verb to the end. But that could be applied to anything. If you're studying French and history, for example, have you studied the French Revolution? Is there a literary movement that you've studied in Spanish? Anything that can feed back and show that you understand how the two kind of interconnect and kind of develop your passion, that's a great thing to include.
And finally, make your personal statement personal, make it really about you, because when I look at an application, obviously I look at the grades, at the reference as well, but the personal statement is the only bit that gives you a voice and that in which we can find out who you are and what interests you. So we want to see that in a personal statement as well.
Also, make sure to give yourself enough time. Don't leave it to the last minute. As tempting as it is, you'll be a lot more proud of what you've achieved in your personal statement if you put your hard effort into it and, really work at it.
Yeah, and related to that, proofread. It doesn't make a great impression if we read a really interesting statement, but full of typos, or in the case of languages especially, if you include a quote or a film title or a book title in the target language, but your word processor for some reason autocorrects it to something completely different. It's really important that you catch these changes and these typos before you submit it. So make sure you give yourself plenty of time to proofread.
Also, I find what really helps is reading it out loud to yourself. Not only does that kind of avoid sounding very robotic, because you're always given like certain structures and phrases to adhere to, it also makes sure that your statement flows nicely and it kind of captures your own individual voice. It can be really off-putting to someone reading through it when you're reading and you get to a very weird sentence, you don't know how it works, and you spend more time thinking about, oh, that was not properly grammatized, than, oh, what is this person trying to tell me?
Yeah. So hopefully these few tips have been helpful to you, but if you have any other questions, do not hesitate to contact us. We're going to put our contact details in the comments. So thank you very much and good luck.
Thank you, good luck!